Welcome back to the ninth session of AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner training. With just 10 sessions in 2 weeks, this training should help you pass the Cloud Certified Practitioner Certification. My name is Anant Tirumanor. I have been working on AWS and in GCP for the last 3 years. I have uh, uh, recently completed the certification and compiled all the materials so that it will be easy for getting certified. If you need to get a lot more AWS content, please subscribe to this channel, like this video please. To get the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner, there are 4 domains that will be tested on. 26% of the questions come from cloud concepts, 25% as per AWS comes from security and compliance. They suggest that 33% of the questions come from technology and 16% from billing and pricing. So today we'll take a look at billing and pricing. We've already covered cloud concepts, security and compliance, and technology in the previous sessions. After finishing billing, I'll go through a few question samples, and then I'll also go back and revisit one of the security topics that we rushed through earlier, so that you can cover all your bases for any kind of questions that come up in the exam. Let's go through the billing concepts. There are certain services that AWS provides. Most of the questions are going to be from that in this domain. Most of the questions are going to be like, which tool would you use for this, for looking at the bill, for finding out your expenses. So we just look at the tools and then we look at some sample questions. So one of the services or tools that AWS provides is a TCO calculator, which is a total cost of ownership. For this certification, if you're not aware of what a total cost of ownership is, please read up on that. But I'll give you a brief explanation here. So a total cost of ownership of an application includes any expense that you have for running the servers, any kind of networking cost, any kind of like application development fixes that you have to actually support your application, all that cost that you have to incur for that. And it's typically calculated for a year or like for 3 years after the application goes live. That's how it's calculated. But a knowledge of total cost of ownership is definitely needed for this exam. The TCO calculator tool helps you reduce the total cost of ownership, and like it helps you understand you don't need to have large capital expenditures by putting in your own servers, on-prem servers, and it provides options that are pay as you go, and you can compare the cost with respect to what you would do on an AWS platform versus if you did it by yourself. You can compare those costs. So the TCO calculators help you to estimate the cost savings, like when you do it on AWS versus when you actually build it on-prem. How much would it actually cost in each of the options, and how much you would actually save. And you can make multiple assumptions, and based on that you can change the way the calculator provides the inputs. So this is one of the tools. The next is not a tool, but it's is an offer provided by AWS. They have something called a free tier, within which they have 3 options available. One is always free. Certain services like Lambda services, 1 million transactions a month can be free every month of the year. So if you're using Lambda and you're using like less than 1 million transactions, and there's also a compute time. So if you're within that compute time and within 1 million transactions for the month, you don't have to pay anything. So you just have to pay for anything above that compute time or the million free instances that you get. So some are always free. Those are examples of always free. Anybody who signs up with the AWS account can get the AWS Free Tier. So they get the always free account. Um, you can also have 12 months free options for a lot of services that AWS provides. Like one example is EC2 instances. For the first 12 months, up to 750 uh, hours of EC2 compute, you can actually get it for free. Anything above that, you just pay for how much computing power you use. You don't have to pay for anything else for EC2. So, but it's just calculated based on the number of compute hours you use. And if you don't use more than 750 for the first year, you can get it completely free. So those are options that you get completely free. And AWS also gives trials, and there are, if you go to the website now and check, there'll be different trials versus you check it like 6 months from now. So these keep changing all the time. But AWS can give you trials of say Redshift for a year, sometimes for 6 months, and then after the trial period, you'll start incurring the cost. So AWS Free Tier is something you need to understand for the exam. The other tool, which is typically asked in a lot of questions, you definitely will see this either as an option or you will choose this as the right option in one of the questions, because 16% of the questions come from billing, and a lot of them will be straightforward. This section, I think, out of the 16% of the questions, probably one question or two would be a little bit tricky, but everything else should be pretty straightforward. If you know the tool, you can just choose the right choice. You wouldn't be confused between multiple options. So know all your tools. So the AWS pricing calculator is the first tool. Is one of the tools we'll look at. It lets you explore the AWS certificate. So essentially, it's a pricing calculator. So before you actually set up your EC2 instance, before you set up your application, so you need, say, 5 EC2 instances and a database connection, and you need some storage in S3 for your application. So if you want to, before you set it up, go and estimate how much it's going to cost you. Then you can go ahead and choose like your region. You can do an advanced estimate or a quick estimate, as you see in the image here, and you can also choose all the options that would vary your EC2 instances cost, your database RDS instance or DynamoDB's cost, or your S3 buckets cost, what storage class you would use, what how much storage you'll have, how long will you store it for. So those kind of things you'll choose for S3 bucket. For EC2 instance, you'll choose like type of instance, whether it's going to be a tiny instance with less RAM, like micro, or you want to have a large instance with a lot of RAM, and whether it's going to be compute optimized or memory optimized. So you can choose all those things, and based on those, it will give you an estimate. So the keywords to remember here are, when you're not setting it up, you just want to estimate it, then you use the tool pricing calculator. The next tool, or before we go to the next tool, I want to stop and like understand how we get charged for the major services, because they're not going to go ahead and ask you about like charging about some like some other very detailed tools, but they might ask about Lambda S3 or EC2, because those are typically very commonly used. So for an EC2 instance, how you charge? You're charged only based on the number of requests for your function, and the time it takes to I'm sorry, that is wrongly labeled. The first column there should be Lambda. Sorry about that. So read the first column is Lambda. For Lambda, you're charged based on the number of requests for your function. So like number of times you get a request, the Lambda gets invoked, whether it's based on a trigger or whether it's based on an API call through an API gateway. The number of requests you get for that Lambda function would would determine how much you pay. Also, it takes how much time it takes for that to run. Those are the two things that determine how much your Lambda is going to cost. You could reduce your costs. Um, I'm sorry, that is incorrect there too. You can reduce your costs of 1 to 3 year for compute savings plan. Okay, yeah. So for Lambda instances, you can reduce your cost. Sorry, this because the headings are mixed up here. The first heading should actually read Lambda, then S3, then EC2. That confused me a lot. Sorry about the slide heading, but yeah, let's go on. So EC2 instances, Lambda instances are charged based on the number of requests you make and the time it takes for them to run. You could reduce the cost by reserving like the Lambda function for compute savings plan. You can have a 1 or 3 year compute savings plan. This is just like reserved instances, but you don't have to choose what instance you have and all those kind of details. You can actually go into a compute savings plan. This is more like the savings plan that EC2 instances have, so it's pretty similar to that. One, you also get, as I said in the previous slide, you get a million requests free and up to 3.2 million seconds of compute time per month you get free. So every month, if you make less than a million requests, and if it doesn't take more compute time than 3.2 million seconds, then you don't have to pay anything. That's Lambda. For S3, how you pay depends on the object size. So if it's large, like GB of data, then you pay more. It depends on the storage classes that you're going to use, whether it's going to be intelligent tiering, whether it's going to be Glacier, obviously you'll pay much lesser. If it's going to be standard, then you probably pay the highest. And intelligent tiering will automatically change the tier based on how you set up. Obviously, you can have like a life cycle rule where after 3 months it moves from one storage class to another, so that can determine how much you pay as well. You also pay based on how long you have this object stored during the month. So if you have it just for 3 days in the month, and then you remove it, or you just added it 3 days before the end of the month, so you just have to pay for those 3 days that you had it stored. You don't have to pay for the whole month. You also have to pay for any requests made to your Amazon S3 objects and buckets. So for example, you create your bucket, you upload your image, and you have an image sharing app where other people can look at the uploaded image. So when somebody uploads it, you don't have to actually pay for it. But if a million people view it, so they request this object to be retrieved from Amazon and then view it on their phone or their computer, then you'll have to pay for all the requests made to retrieve this information. So for any request made to retrieve it, you'll have to pay for the network costs. You'll have to pay for storage management features like Amazon S3 inventory, analytics, object tagging. So if you add like object tagging, so any storage that gets along with that, any analytics that you build on top of this for the S3, you'll have to pay for that. You also have to pay for data transfer. So whenever somebody downloads it, or you want to move it from one S3 bucket in one region to another S3 bucket in another region, that's a data transfer. So you have to pay for that. If it's within a region, there are some rules I think we saw when we are dealing with S3 a few sessions ago. So we don't have to pay when it's within the same region. You're transferring from one bucket to another, you don't have to pay it for the data transfer cost. But yeah, for a lot of cases, whenever you transfer data from one region to another, you'll have to pay for the data transfer cost. The last one there, again, it reads incorrectly. It has to be EC2. For EC2 instances, you just pay for the compute time that you're running. So it doesn't matter if you are setting up a huge instance or a small instance. Um, if your instance is running and it's taking up um, like computing power, whether you're processing customer requests or not, if your server is running, it probably takes some compute time, and if it's running and it's also processing something else, it takes more compute time. So you pay for that with a that. So for one of the clients that I was working with, we set up a system where uh, uh, the batches run at night. So we start the EC2 instance, then we run all the batches, and then we stop the EC2 instance. That way we were reducing the cost of usage. So the EC2 instance was running only for the time where we were running it. We couldn't use a spot instance because we wanted to run the batch at the time we wanted it to run. It cannot. We were not flexible with moving the time around. So that was something you can do to actually save costs for Lambda. The other ways you can save costs for sorry, not for Lambda, for EC2 instance. Other way you can save costs for EC2 instances is by spot instances. When you have flexibility, you're not doing a business critical workload. You can have spot instances. You can have reserved instances. That is, you pay upfront, but you have this instance reserved for you. Or you could have savings plans. So with savings plans, you don't actually choose what instance you want, but you know that you're going to use at least a dollar amount per month or a dollar amount per year. So then you can go into a savings plan. Okay, that was a confusing slide because of the headings. I'm sorry about that. The other tools I was going into, so we were going into a couple of tools like the pricing estimator. Now we look at the next one, which is the billing and cost management dashboard. This is another tool they'll ask in a lot of options. The difference between the others in this is that, so if you look at the uh, dashboard here, as soon as you go into the billing and cost management dashboard, you'll be able to see a spend summary. So you can see your current month balance. You can compare it with your previous month balance. You can also forecast for the next month based on current usage, but you cannot forecast for much longer. But you can forecast for the next months based on current months. Um, you can you can see how much free tier usage you've done. You can see you can look at your you can actually go in there into other tools such as Cost Explorer and budgets. So if you look at the left, there are something called Cost Explorer, budgets, and budget reports. So if you go in there, those are other tools as well you might have asked questions about. But in the billing and cost management dashboard, you can at least look at your bills, compare your current month with previous month. You can get a forecast for next month, but you can't actually set a budget or like understand how much it's going to cost you to do certain things. So you have to actually go into those tools, the Cost Explorer or the budget tool, to actually do those things. And they might ask you about those as well. So let me go on to the next one. We've spoken about our AWS organizations when we started the first session of this training. So the AWS organizations helps for providing a consolidated billing. So when you have 3 accounts that are all rolling into one organization, and when you have to pay together, you can just have a consolidated billing. So you can just charge it to the primary account, which is the organization, and the organization's administration can take care of paying the one bill for the whole organization. And even though you have a consolidated bill, you can actually see your bill split out across different accounts within the organization. The biggest advantage of getting a consolidated bill is your ability to get volume pricing. For instance, like for storing S3 about 10 GB per month, like AWS gives you a discount. say AWS account 1 does 6 GB, like 2 does like 5 GB, and 3 does like another 5 GB. So individually they don't actually get the pricing discount because they don't cross the 10 GB threshold per month. But when you add them together, then they cross the 10 GB. So now they are now eligible to actually get the volume pricing. So as an organization, the whole organization gets a volume pricing discount. So that's the biggest advantage of consolidated billing. And organizations can be set up to have multiple accounts under it. So if you have three, no, your multiple applications have their own AWS account, or if your marketing department has its own AWS account, your finance department has its own AWS account, your IT department has its own AWS account, you can actually combine those together into under one organization, and that organization account can help with volume pricing discounts. Let's say you have you want to like um, have a budget for how much you want to spend. So that's when you go into the budget tool. So AWS budgets helps you kind of see how much you've been using for this month and compare it against a budget you set up. So you can set up a budget and you can split it based on like different tags that the EC2 instances have, and you can set a budget for them. You can say that you just want to spend like 200 for the month for EC2 instances, and you can set an alert to say that whenever it crosses 100 or it's crossed like 80% of it, send me an alert, and then you will get an email saying that it's been 20 days into the month and you've already crossed 80%. And you can set this like in a very flexible format, so you can set it up in multiple different ways. And you can have the budget based on dollar amount, that is a cost budget, or you can have it based on a usage budget. So if you see the different tabs there, you can set it up based on a dollar amount, cost budget, or you can have it based on a usage bucket. That is how much usage you think it will take, and you can monitor it versus how much is actually happening. So to set how much you want to spend per month or how much you want to use per month, you go into the budgets tool. So that's how I remember it for the exam perspective. With respect to Cost Explorer, Cost Explorer helps like visualize. So it's more of a graph and understanding how much it costs, and you can also see your usage over time. So so pricing calculator we saw earlier is for future. When you've not set it up, then you see what the price, what it's going to cost you. So you can estimate it using the pricing tool. But for Cost Explorer, this you can actually over time, when you see the phrase over time, I think you most probably, and if it's in the past, and if it's over time, if you want to check your usage cost over time, that is things that happened in the past, and it should point you to Cost Explorer. It can show you up to 12 months of historical data, so you can track the last 6 months, last year, last 3 months, last 8 months, whatever you want to really track. You can track that. Like you can also group by tag. So like if you don't know what a tag is, tags are like user defined key value pairs. So all your EC2 instances, say for example you have a project which uses one EC2 instance, one database, you have them in under the same tag. Say they are based on the application of like store update. So or storing store related application. So you can have a store related application, and then you can have the same tag for the database on all the EC2 instances that use the same project. And then those with that tab you can actually group by. If you see here, there's a group by, and it shows instance type. You can choose the key value tag as store, and then you could say tag store, and then you could check this for that tag. You can check how it's actually the cost has been changing over month. And this also helps to say, okay, we have a huge bump in cost in November, and then it comes down during December and January. Like what's happening? Why did that happen? You can go back and explore that. Was it because we got too many requests, or was it because some like event that happened you will have to probably work on or check? So those kind of things it helps with. And this is like you could get confused with Cost Explorer with either the pricing, which is for future, or for billing. The billing dashboard just provides the bill for this month and previous month, and you can go into the bill, pay it. You can check all the, set up a payment and all those things you can do in the billing dashboard. The Cost Explorer is more of like visually analyzing how your spending has been. How do you this thing? For instance, here if you see they have multiple colors for each instance type. So they're checking which instances cost them how much over each month. That's a way to check it, or you could check it depending on the way you want to check it, based on application, based on region. You want to do it based on tag, based on availability zone. So you can do it in multiple different ways. So all that kind of visualization, it's kind of like a BI tool, where you can uh, deeply look into what kind of costs you've been having and what categories they fall under. This is one thing where you will definitely get a question. So just this slide, if you understand everything from this slide about AWS support plans, you're sure to complete that answer, and you'll definitely get one answer right in the Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. The AWS support plans are basic, developer, business, and enterprise. So there are 4 plans. Remember that. Basic is available to all customers. So if you just log in, create an AWS account, you have the basic account. What do you get with the basic account? Actually, you can't really email someone. You can't get any chat support. None of that is available. But you can go into your like management dashboard, and you can go into your web tool and check for personal health dashboard. It gives you if all your EC2 instances are like green, yellow, red. And then you can also find AWS trusted advisor checks. So the trusted advisor checks what like applications you have, what configurations you have against what the AWS best practices are, and automatically provides uh, recommendations to you. So those are available for the basic. But remember, it doesn't have all the trusted advisor checks. So for that, you'll have to actually get into a better support plan. What we have in my company is the developer plan. This is typically recommended by AWS if you're experimenting or testing with AWS. So we have access to business hours email. So that is, if you send an email at 6 p.m., you probably wouldn't get an answer until the next day. So they work. You get access to support. You could send them an email with your question. You could probably they'll get back to you within their business hours, and there is no there's no time limit associated with when you'll get back to support. But at least you have somebody with an email. So if you pay for the developer account, then you at least have somebody who can actually support you through email. AWS also has some help with best practice guidance. So they'll give us links where these are what the best practices are. They could guide us with that. They also send like client-side diagnostic tools, so which you can download and install on your system, and then you can help it with diagnostics. They also kind of provide architecture support, but it's called building block architecture support, which is like a set of standards that they provide and say this is how you can architect your solution. And if you're doing a retail application, this is the suggested architectures. They have a few suggested architectures, whether it's going to be serverless or whether it's going to be your own hosting, they have a few options, and they have those diagrams set up. So that's how they support for the developer account. When you go for the business account, um, this is recommended for any, if you have any production workloads in AWS, it's recommended to have the business support. That is, you get a 24/7 phone, email, chat access to cloud support engineers. Remember, this can also come in the exam. You don't get cloud support engineers until you get to business. For the developer account, even though you get business as access, you actually get cloud support associates, not engineers. So they may not be as technically savvy to actually fix like installation issues or log issues, or you don't see certain things on your log. So those kind of things will not be supported by cloud support engineers, the cloud support associates. So you'll need a business level support plan to actually support that. What you get with this is you get 24/7 email, phone, chat access. You get support engineers who can email back to you, chat with you, and get on a call with you. You get use case guidance. That is, they're a bit more specific with respect to your use case, not industry. Like earlier, we saw building block architecture support. So now, not just the best practice guidance, they also give you a use case guidance. So based on your use case, they would suggest rather use auto scaling with 4 EC2 instances and have them in two different availability regions. You don't have to have multiple region for your support. So those kind of use case related guidance is provided at this level. They also, this is the first level where you get all AWS trusted advisor checks. So during the basic and developer, you had AWS trusted advisor checks, but that was just the basic one. If you need all the AWS trusted advisor checks, you need to get to the business or the enterprise level support plan. For the limited, you also get limited support for third-party software. That is, this is very, very limited. Say for example, you're installing Linux and like when you're installing Linux or when you're installing Windows on your server, you're having some problems. You can call them and they'll support you. But if you have to run into any like major issue, you probably have to go back to the actual person who's providing, like for Windows, you'll have to go back to Microsoft to actually get it fully supported. But they provide limited support in the sense that if it's something general technical like Windows engineer would understand, they would support with that. So anything specific with the Windows fix that uh, it it uh, it stops the EC2 instance from running as you expected earlier, those kind of things you still have to go to the third party software. The last tier is enterprise. If you get the enterprise support plan, you have the utmost protection that AWS provides. They actually have, and this is recommended by AWS if you have any business critical or mission critical workloads. So if you have anything that's mission critical, business critical, you AWS recommends you to take the enterprise support plan. They provide every like support engineer on the phone, email, and chat. No, they also provide something called a technical account manager. Let's look at what technical account manager is in a bit, but before that, we'll look at the what else does the enterprise plan give. They give consulting for application architecture guidance, so you can actually consult with them and talk to them about your architecture, your use case, and they can probably provide a solution, or you can at least share your solution with them and get their feedback on whether they suggest any improvements or changes, or whether um, they have any other guidance that they want you to align with. So you can have that kind of consulting with them. Um, you can have a short-term engagement with AWS where you get event management. Say, for example, your instance does not like launch for some reason, then you can get a short-term engagement with AWS support. They can get on a Zoom call with you, or they can get on a conference with you and then uh, troubleshoot your issue, or they can help you with most basic support when you have a production event, or a like event in some lower region as well. So you can actually contact them and you can have their support. So the biggest advantage of enterprise is the technical account manager, the TAM. So this again, a lot of questions I see from previously asked questions. AWS, they talk about the technical account manager. So technical account manager is somebody who will be your primary point of contact when you have an enterprise tier plan. When you have the enterprise tier plan, you can just pick up your phone and you will have access to call your technical account manager, or more frequently you'll probably email them, and you can have them set up a call with you for architectural guidance, any kind of reviews. They'll get people from AWS to talk to you, set up meetings with the experts in whatever kind of uh, range you like, whatever kind of services you need help with. Say for example, uh, my in my previous company I was working with, we had the enterprise support, and we wanted to build a machine learning model, and we wanted to be able to tag a lot of information, and then like feed that tagged information to a model, and then that model had to spit out the predictions for the ones that were not tagged. So it was text analysis, and a little bit of image analysis. So we wanted to do all that. So we contacted our technical account manager. He set up a meeting with the machine learning like group from AWS. There were like three experts from machine learning perspective. They came in and they explained all the tools that they have, and they suggested the best set of tools that AWS will suggest for us, including like Mechanical Turk, um, SageMaker, and Redshift. So those kind of suggestions your technical account manager can help you get with respect to pulling AWS resources and then actually talking with you and get your uh, design solutions much better. They also help with integrated approach of how do you integrate this AWS service with this AWS service. So all those things are very much done with by somebody working with a technical account manager. So with respect to AWS support plans, I think this slide should cover most of it. I'll also provide a link that AWS has, which compares all their support plans. It's pretty much in detail. If you don't understand much, I think come back to this slide. This slide is enough for passing the Certified Cloud Practitioner exam, as far as I've seen the questions. So if you can try that. Let's go through some questions. Which support plan includes all AWS trusted advisor checks at the lowest cost? So if you want to go for the least expensive one, but still get all the AWS trusted advisor checks, then I think we just spoke about it. It has to be on the business plan. Which action can you perform with consolidated billing? So you want to use the tool which is called consolidated billing, which is where you can actually have an organization pay for all your AWS accounts. Say there are multiple AWS accounts. We looked at this. So which one would you use? Would you be able to review how much cost your predicted AWS usage will incur by the end of the month? Do you want? Will you be able to create an estimate for the cost of your use cases on AWS? The last two options are combine usage across accounts to receive volume pricing discounts, which is what an organization setup does. in consolidated billing, you'll already get the volume pricing discount. Um, you don't actually perform that action in consolidated billing, so it's sees like pretty close. But let's move on. Last option is visualize and manage AWS cost and usage over time. So when you want to visualize your AWS cost usage over time, so we know there's a tool for that. It's called Cost Explorer, I believe. So let's look at that. So if you want to review how much cost your predicted AWS usage will incur by the end of the month, then you actually use something called AWS Budgets, which is where it it predicts that you've used $100 in the last 15 days. So in the month you should be using about $200. The pricing calculator is where you create an estimate for things that you're not set up on AWS, and Cost Explorer is where you visualize your cost over time. And for our answer, because we want to do consolidated billing, so the consolidated billing is one organization having multiple accounts under it. So it has to be the combined usage across accounts to receive volume pricing discounts. Which pricing tool is used to visualize, understand, and manage your AWS cost usage over time? So if you want to visualize and understand your usage over time, I think when you see the phrase over time, I think it's pretty simple for us to choose what it is. But let's look at the other options. AWS Pricing Calculator, you could actually create an estimate. You could find out, like, you could estimate how much you're going to use in the future. With budgets, you can actually plan your usage. You can set your alerts. And with Cost Explorer, you can report usage over time. And free tier is not even relevant here. It's a offer that AWS provides where there are three options within that, and you can get um, free either for 12 months, free for ever, and there are some trials that AWS allows. So the closest one, because it says over time, it has to be the Cost Explorer. Which pricing tool enables you to receive alerts when your service usage exceeds a threshold that you've defined? That word that says exceeds threshold means you're setting up a threshold, and then you're also able to receive alerts. So seems like it's talking about uh, like uh, like budgets, which is your threshold, and also getting an alert, because budgets you're able to set an alert. But let's look at the other options. In the billing dashboard, you can look at the current bill. Um, you can also look at the previous month's expense, and you can also look at how much it's. You can estimate it for a month ahead as well. With the Cost Explorer, you can check over time how much usage you've done. You can build reports on top of it. It's a lot of a visualization that happens in Cost Explorer. So it has to be budgets. I've covered whatever we need to cover with respect to with this module, billing. So let me quickly go through some of the sub PPC concepts that we quickly went over, but we didn't spend a lot of time going through. Whenever you have data on the VPC on inside the AWS, you will have to build a VPC on it. Say you have all your AWS cloud assets within one region. So you say it's US East 1, and then to have any of your EC2 instances, any of the any of your assets, your RDS instances, you need to have a virtual private cloud defined first, which is a walled network within AWS where you can actually store all the information. And you cannot have one VPC network spanning across regions. So you'll have to build a VPC network if you actually have a solution that has multi-region like solution, then you'll have to actually build a VPC network for your for each region separately, and then to connect those two VPC regions, we'll have to use something called peering. We'll look at that quickly. But yeah, we need to have one VPC region for each region that you build at least. So you can also decide to define more than one VPC region, which I haven't seen a business region in the projects I've worked for to do, but it's possible. So in case you have a business region to actually do it, you can do that. So within your virtual private cloud and within your region, say you have like a couple of availability zones that you're using, zone A and zone B. So you will have to actually define two different subnets, because a subnet is a range of IP addresses. Like within your VPC network, um, range of IP addresses, say from A to L, would go under one subnet, and from M to Z would go under another subnet. So you will have to separate them out, and those that list of IP addresses is what actually creates a subnet. And whenever you create a subnet, you associate two things with it. One is a route table, and another is a network access control list. And here you see the two VPCs here. One is a private VPC and other is a public VPC. How you know one is a public VPC versus a private VPC is that if the route table has access to connect from the internet gateway, so if the internet gateway can connect into the route table, that means you actually have access from the outside world, not only within the VPC, not only within the subnet, to actually connect um, to the other resources inside. So when the route table has an access from the internet gateway, it becomes a public VPC. If it does not, then it's a private VPC. So only resources within AWS can actually connect to this subnet. So every VPC has two things. One is the route table, and other is the network access control list. And I'll talk about what the difference is between those two. But just to give you a brief understanding, a network access control list is like a firewall. So it tells who can actually ingress and who can actually egress. So who can come in, who can go out, like which connections can actually come in, which connections can actually get out. So that kind of firewall, that every, like you have a laptop, you probably have a firewall set up there to protect you from like malicious URLs hitting your website, or you going to a website and like that website downloading certain things. It could you can have you will typically have a firewall system set up. So just like every system has its own firewall, like a network access control list for the VPC itself, not just the system inside it, not just the EC2 instance inside it. For the whole subnet, the network access control list does that firewall work for you. And the route table helps route from like a traffic coming from IP address A needs to be routed to IP address, say L. So that routing is defined in the route table. So anything that like, it's not only that somebody can come inside, which the network access control list allows. If somebody comes inside, where do we route them to? So that's what the routing table does. So within your VPC subnets, you can say define a couple of EC2 instances in each of them. So those actually have something called a security group. And the security group is the firewall associated with that EC2 instance. So you can have the same security group for EC2 instance like 1 and 2. So if they're the same security group, then they're allowed to talk to each other. And the security group is something like a firewall, is exactly a firewall for that instance. So, but because it's Just like VPC has a network access control list, which is a firewall for the VPC, each EC2 instance would have its own firewall, which is called the security group. So the security group is another firewall on top of the network access control list that the VPC itself protects. So they'll have to get through both the network access control list and the EC2 instance security group to be able to actually like get an inquiry through or run a command on an EC2 instance. So so the traffic that's coming in will have to be able to allowed on the network access control list and be allowed on the security group. So it has to be allowed on both. I guess that gives you a good understanding of what the subnets are. But there are a few important peaks that we need to look at. A VPC can span multiple availability zones. For each availability zone, they can have subnets in each availability zone. And the subnet cannot actually span multiple availability zones. Similarly, the VPC cannot span multiple regions. So if you have two region solution, you'll have to have one VPC at least in one region, another VPC in another region. So you'll have to have two VPCs. And for the VPCs between to talk to each other, so you have one corporate network and you want the two VPCs to be able to talk to each other, then you will have to create something called VPC peering that connects between the VPC in region 1 and VPC in region 2. And VPC peering allows you to connect them within the AWS network. So it doesn't have to come to the public internet to actually connect, but you can actually use the AWS's infrastructure, their network, which has a much faster throughput to actually communicate. That's about VPCs and peering. Subnet is actually a range of IP addresses. So you can define say 191.1.1.0 to 191.1.1.20. So all the IP addresses, those 21 IP addresses that come in that range would fall under the subnet that you determine. So you can actually set up a range of IP addresses. That's how you actually create a subnet. And when you create a subnet, it's by default private. I think this is one question that can come in the exam. So whether your subnet is by default private or public is a good thing to understand. So it's by default private. So you'll have to actually then make it public by changing your route table. Each subnet is associated with two things. One is the network access control list, and the other is the route table. Any subnet you define, when you define it, you'll have to define the range of IP addresses, and then you'll have to associate with the network access control list and with the route table. So you'll have to define those two things. We also spoke about security groups. So the security group we spoke about are firewalls for your VPC's individual EC2 instances. So each EC2 instances can have a different security group, or rather you'll have the same, like if you want those EC2 instances to actually communicate with each other, you'll have those two have the same security groups. Those act as firewalls for each individual EC2 instance. They don't apply to the entire subnet. So the security group is only associated with the EC2 instance, not to the entire subnet. Whenever you create an instance, if you go through the steps, you'll see that you'll have to associate it with a security group. After you associate with the VPC and with the subnet, then the next screen will actually have to associate with the security group. And like if you have a VPC and then VPC has its default security group, then that security group will be allocated to the EC2 instance by default. So the confusing pieces, let's just clarify those. If you get confused between the NACL, Network Access Control List, and the security group, if it's at the EC2 instance level, then it's a security group. If it's at the subnet level, then it's a NACL. And obviously, subnet is at a higher level than the EC2 instance. If the NACL itself does not allow it, then the security group, like whether it allows it or not, it doesn't matter. So the NACL is at the outer level. The security groups only allow us to define the rules um, to apply to both inbound and outbound. For network access control lists, you have to define inbound and outbound traffic separately. Um, so what that means is, like the point number 2 and 3 are similar. So security groups are stateful. That is, when you allow some IP address to actually talk to your EC2 instance, that is, you allow inbound traffic, the outbound traffic by default is enabled. So whenever you allow something to talk inbound, outbound as well is enabled. So it's both ways. So it's stateful. So whenever a request comes in from somewhere, the response can go back to the same place. That's how security groups work. You cannot actually define one rule for inbound and one rule for outbound. You cannot say you get a request, but you cannot respond back to the same server. You have to respond back to somewhere else. You cannot do that. But in network access control list, you can say there can be a request from this server or from this IP address, but you cannot return information back to that outbound IP address. So you can define that in an ACL. So you can actually have a inbound specific rule and an outbound specific rule. So you can have two different rules. So that's the same thing when it means like they're not stateful. So when they're not stateful, then they don't. An inbound rule does not automatically allow an outbound rule. So or deny an outbound rule. Security groups. The last point in here are security group rules are processed like you don't do it in order. You have to look at all the security group rules. If there are 5 rules, and if the third rule doesn't allow it, while the fifth rule allows it, then depending on all the 5, the most restrictive rule 3 does not allow it, so it does not allow the traffic. While in network access control list, they get evaluated in numeric order. So if the second rule actually allows it, while the third rule does not allow it, it doesn't matter. So the second rule allowed it, so the network traffic is allowed. Okay, so things to remember are at what level NACL and security groups are, whether they are stateful or not stateful, whether they are evaluated all at a time, all rules at a time, or in numerical order. So those are things that you need to remember. And the other confusing questions you could get are NACL versus routing tables. The key to understand the difference is that one is actually determining a route and the other is actually providing access. So the first piece is access. You can actually get access, but after you get access, you also have to have a route which specifies where you have to go. So NACL and security groups are about access control, that is firewall. Routing is about specific routes. So the routing table is about specifying what routes you need to take. But to actually do security properly, you need both NACL and routing tables and security groups as well. So you need all 3 of them to actually have your networking security done properly. With networking access control list, you can declare that X, Y, and Z IP addresses are allowed, and declare that A, B, and C IP addresses are denied. But even though you allow X, Y, and Z, in the route table, you can actually say X, traffic from X would actually go into EC2 instance E1, and the traffic from Y would go into EC2 instance E2, etc. So you can actually route the different requests that come in on the route table. So I have some additional links here, which I'll also provide in the description below. These are things you can read in addition to your billing and pricing, but I tried to cover all the previous questions that I've seen with respect to billing and pricing in my previous slides. If you want to read more, I do have access to those links in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you everyone. Bye.